This time on the show, DNS brute forcing part 2 with a little bit of Pierce. My name is Darren Kitchen, and you're watching Hak5 from the hospital. Again.
Yeah, hook me up, I'm ready.
This episode of Hak5 is brought to you by the United States Air Force, Medal of Honor, Step Up to Tier 1, and Domain.com. Got a great idea? It all starts with a great domain, Domain.com.
Hello and welcome to Hak5. My name is Darren Kitchen and this is your weekly dose of Technolist. We have a wonderful show for you guys this week. We're doing some interesting, fun stuff with DNS. And I should probably say off the top of the show that I'm a little bit loopy, and also thank you very much for all the well wishes. If you've sent messages by like Facebook, Twitter, email, whatever. If you're not aware, if you heard on on Buzz Out Loud that like I got in a motorcycle accident, but my bike is okay, and I was in the hospital, and they stitched me up, and I'm okay, and I now have like a really cool cane. So I get to like pimp around, and then they gave me these, and I feel better. And I'm gonna heal up, and I'll be okay in a couple weeks. But for right now, you're just gonna have to deal with a loopy and oh, Buzz Out Loud's a podcast on CNET. I'm there on Wednesdays, so tune in at CNET. Oh, and then I'm over at on Mondays, just in case you don't know, with Tom Merritt, doing Tech News Today, and the CNETs with like Molly Wood and Rafe Nadelman. Had to throw in that plug. We were talking about DNS. We're talking about DNS this week. We're going to be following up with last week's. Oh, sorry for the episode being late. As you might imagine, kind of crazy week with the whole getting hit by a car thing. DNS brute forcing. It's what we were talking about last week. We're going to continue this week. We're going to be talking, we're just going to start out recapping a little bit of what we learned, do a little bit of clarification on some of the finer points there, as well as talking about name servers and zone transfers, and then we'll play with some tools like NS lookup and dig, and then finally one of my favorite ones in backtrack 4, fierce, and do a little bit of brute forcing, so we can have fun in this wonderful little technique that's called, this thing called enumeration, which is basically just seeing what's out there, because how do you know what to attack unless you know what's around, you know? And yeah, so that's what we're doing today. Also, probably not going to have Jason or Shannon or anything on. I'm kind of just rambling here. Anyway, all I'm saying is we're just doing DNS today. So, you know, buckle up or something. Right, so why don't we define some terms? Because that's where we're gonna begin. So terms. You think it's really cool how I like speed up? No, actually, I really do write that fast. So let's talk about some terms, right? Host. Now, what's a host? Well, a host is, if we say, like, let's write out, let's give ourselves an example, something to work with here, right? So www, that's in frame, right? No, that's not in frame. Is terms in frame? I'm just going to bring things down a little bit. www.hak5, come here, .org, right. www right there is our host. I said last week it was our subdomain. We'll get to that. It's actually, that's our host. What does that mean, right? That means that, that it's a computer. You know, it could be a server, it could be a laptop, it could be a client, whatever. It's a host. It's just a computer. Not much more to it. Then we also have zones, right? So what is a zone? Well, a zone are all of these things. Org is a zone, Hak5 is a zone, www is a zone. boop, boop. And you can have a ton of these, and they're all the little elements that make up the domain name system namespace. It's just an element of the namespace. So that's a zone, right? Whether you want to call it a TLD for this guy right here, top level domain, right? But it's a zone, and Hak5, it's a domain, sure, it's also a zone. www, it's a host, it's a zone. We could have like say like well, yeah. So okay, subdomain, right? Because I said that last week, right? Say like we had corp.hak5.org. Well, imagine, for instance, Hak5 is like this giant corporation all of a sudden, right? We might have like east.corp, and we might have west.corp, and that would be, that right there would be a subdomain, right? But I'm not going to focus too much on that at the moment. We're really just interested in these hosts. That little part that's a zone, right? IP addresses, as you guys know, if we were to like ping this, for instance, pull up my terminal here. I forget exactly what it is. Hak5.org. Yeah, 6611. So this is equal to 66.11.227.124, right? Well, obviously, you guys know that's our IP address. Okay? Woohoo! Service. In fact, service goes along with daemon. And you can debate all day long about which is correct or whatever, but essentially these are two terms that mean a server, a service, a daemon. They're really all kind of interchangeable sometimes. I find more that people say service on the Windows side of things, whereas daemon on the Linux side of things. But to give you a perfect example here, IIS, right? It's Internet Information Services, I think, right? Versus Apache. What are both of them? Well, they're web servers. They provide you beautiful web pages so that you can type them into your Firefox and hit go, and then you have lolcats. And so they're both web servers, but one of them is considered a daemon and one considered a service. But you know what? At the end of the day, they're really just a piece of software that's listening on a port on a host that has an IP address that you can hit with a zone. Huh? Kind of cool, right? So I guess I just did mention port. And this is where I need to clarify from last week, right? So we're talking about web servers here, okay? www is the host. That implies that it is a a web server, right? Well, there's this little :80 here, right? You don't have to type it into your browser because your browser automatically assumes that your web server will be running on port 80 because there's a bunch of people decided to make an RFC, and then they all said, yes, that sounds like a fine idea. We'll put web servers on port 80. And really, to be honest, you could run it on 80, 81, 82, whatever you want. There's a ton of common ports that you'll find from 0 to 1024, 1023, right? There's 1024 what we know as well-known ports. 25 for SMTP and 110 for POP and 80 for your web server and 443 for SSL. You know, the list goes on, and then everything above 1024 are uncommon, like 27015. If you're a gamer, you probably know that as the source port for where you can get your Counter-Strike action on, if you're a gamer, right? Really all a port is an endpoint of communication where a service is listening that it's going to go ahead and communicate with you. So while we have right here our zone, www, there's a little thing called an A record that points to an IP address, this guy right here, and on there's a port, maybe it's 80, and running on 80 is this service here called Apache that's serving you up web pages. Now, I just mentioned something there. and I just forgot what it was. It'll come back to me in just a second. Port. Record. Right, record. Sorry, a little loopy. Record. All right, we talked about those last week. For every DNS element here, right, record, we have a record, right? So this www, this zone, it could have multiple records. One of the most common ones is, like we said last week, an A record, which is an IP version 4 address, which we know is right here, 66.11.227.124. So this zone, www, has a record A, which points to this address, 66.11.227.124, which have a service, Apache, running on port 80, which is going to serve you web pages. Nifty. And thankfully, we don't have to really think about that. Just type it into our browser and up it comes. And like we talked about, there are many more records. CNAME for an alias to another domain. So instead of you querying www and instead of it saying an IP address, it might actually point you to another domain completely, which is what happens when you query irc.hak5.org and it points to secfo. Another one might be NS for name server, which we'll get to here real soon. And I spoke about how like a bunch of awesome people back in the day decided that 80 was going to be where we're going to put your web server. But you can put it anywhere you want. You can put it 8,000. Who cares, right? If you put it on 8,000 in your address bar in Firefox, you'd have to put :8,000 because your browser is expecting it to be on 80, right? There is actually a port that that does matter. And that is 25. Why does 25 matter? Well, 25 is typically the mail server port for SMTP, the Simple Mail Transfer Protocol that makes all of your emails flow, and then you can put boxing gloves on and check the email, right? There's a special record that goes with that. It's called an MX, or Mail Exchange record. And what that record says is, hey, my SMTP server is right here. And for example, on Hak5, it could be smtp.hak5.org. And I would have an SMTP server listening on port 25 because everybody's got to have them on the same port, and we all have to have a record that says MX, that says where is my mail server. So if I try to send mail to your domain, well, I don't know. It doesn't know it's going to be smtp.yourdomain. It could be, like we said last week, mail.hak5.org. Right? So that record is important. That's the only one where I mentioned that the port numbers don't matter. That port number matters. Little tangent there. And as long as we're on a tangent, I should probably also clear up what I said last week about how, what was I mentioning? How, typically you have host names like smtp.hak5.org. We could have pop.hak5.org. And even IMAP. And all of these are typically mail servers, and I did this amazing thing with an eraser where I said, well, or you could just have mail, and I erased SMTP and POP and IMAP. Well, that's not necessarily always the case. I mean, sure, on hak5.org, which is just hosted on like one server, we could do that. We could get away with that because mail could cover, port 25 for our SMTP and 110 here, and I don't remember over here, right? But the reason that you would do this, the reason that you would have a different host for www, a different host for mail dot, a different host for VPN dot and corp dot, and all of your different, whatever it is before the domain, that zone, right? That zone's important because we can have a different record for each one, not just the MX record like I mentioned here about the importance so that we can actually all communicate with our email, right? But they can have different A records that say, okay, this is at that computer, this is at that computer, because there's no one computer that's going to be able to handle all of the internet load of whatever it may be. I mean, shit, I don't want to get into load balancing right now, but suffice it to say, if Hak5 were like some gigantic conglomeration, we would definitely have different servers running each of these services. So when you would query for www.hak5.org, sure, right now it points to 66.11.227.124. And yeah, so do all of the others because we're small enough that we can run on one server. But if we were gigantic, well, yeah, we'd have them on different servers. We'd have them lots of servers. Not going to get into load balancing. Please don't email me about that right now. Trying to keep this high-level overview. I think the high part is in full effect of the overview. Were those jazz hands? I wasn't really sure. I was mostly paying attention. I think we've defined the terms that we needed to define. And I think we've touched on subdomains like east.corp.hak5.org versus west.corp. A little differentiation there. And the importance of ports. But why is it important? Like, well, okay, sure. I did say that it's important as a corporation to be able to have lots of different servers manage your infrastructure. So you can say, oh, our www.whatever, example.com, right, is this IP address here, and that host, that computer, that server, whatever that piece of machinery is going to handle those requests. But if you're looking for SMTP, that's on this machine over here. Because we don't want to like double up, because this guy's already having enough hard time just serving up the web pages. If you want the mail, you go over here. If you want the VPN, that's like down the hall, right? Well, think about it from a perspective as an attacker. You're interested in this organization, and you're like, man, I would really love to get root access on this corporation for various or mischievous or curious, not evil, never evil, but purposes of your own desires. You would like to know what all is out there, because maybe you're looking for software that hasn't been updated, that there are published vulnerabilities for, that you could exploit for your own mischievous, curious, but never evil purposes. You would probably want to know what all is out there. And while sure, you could go to hak5.org and you could say, hey, is there anything at port 1? All right, anything at port 2? Etc., etc., etc. You could ask every port, and we can talk about that later, port scan and all that fun stuff, and you could get an idea of what is available on just hak5.org, right? And then, of course, you could guess, I mean, it's pretty obvious guess, that there is a www. Sure. And you could guess that there's a mail dot and an SMTP dot and maybe a VPN dot and whatever you want, right? But there's no easy way to know what all of the hosts on a domain or a zone are. And that's exactly why we're interested in DNS brute forcing. I should probably said that at the top, because then it would make a lot more sense. We wouldn't be like 7 minutes into this and being like, oh, well, I finally get where he's going with this. Why doesn't he just take a break now? Because my mind, I know. I'm thinking the same thing. I'm thinking, why don't we throw it to Shannon for some trivia? Because we have all those pre-recorded, and then she'll tell you the answer to last week's and what's going on this week, and then we'll even thank one of our excellent sponsors. I hear it's the United States Air Force, so thank you guys for that. And then when we get back, we're going to be talking about name servers and a fun little thing called zone transfers. So stick around. Point my finger at more things with that camera.
Last week's trivia question was, incorporated in California since 1968, this Silicon Valley company is also known as Integrated Electronics, and the answer was Intel. If you want to win some Hak5 swag, go over to hak5.org/trivia and answer this week's question. This member of the Homebrew Computer Club is also known as Crunchman. I think I know this one. Yeah. We'll be right back after a brief word with our sponsor.
This is Titan 1-4. No signs of life. 1-4, hold your position.
What do you got?
Unmanned aircraft is identifying enemy sniper.
Copy that. Let's move. Thanks, Reaper 1-1. We got it from here. Sensors coming off target.
Learn more at airforce.com.
All right, so let's continue with name servers and zone transfers. Now, what is a name server? Well, essentially, a name server is just a computer on the internet that translates a name to a number for you. In most basic terms. I mean, it can also do other things like point you to the mail exchanger or tell you what an alias is. But for right now, let's just say, hey, it's that box that's going to make your life easier so you don't have to remember a whole lot of numbers. So you can say, hey, hak5.org. Yo, who's got hak5.org, right? And then there's this name server that'll be like, ooh, 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 that's this guy over here. And you can be like, boom, yo, what's up? Can I get the latest episode? And that's exactly what your web browser does. That's how the protocol is written. I know, I've seen the source. But there are actually a couple of different kinds of name servers. If you've played with any kind of hosting of your own, if you've bought a domain, if you have a web server or anything like that, you've probably seen ns1.yourisp and ns2.yourisp.com. And those are what we call authoritative name servers. So that's spelled authoritative with horrible handwriting, by the way. And an authoritative name server is just a name server that, that its domain, pun intended, is these set of names, right? Hak5 has a authoritative name server for anything dealing with .hak5.org, right? In fact, let's go ahead and paint that because, so .hak5.org dot. Dun, dun, dun. What's this guy? That's the root. That's totally the root, right? So what happens is, we'll get there. We're almost there, right? So let's just talk about the authoritative name server for Hak5. Well, it actually just so happens to be ns1.zoneedit.com. Boom. And there's also ns2.zoneedit.com, right? Because those two name servers are responsible for any queries that you might have on the Hak5 domain. All right, and there's two kinds. We've got our master and our slave. And it's not a, S&M thing. It's just a, if you remember IDE chains, it's the same kind of way, right? So NS1 and NS2 are there to make your life easier. But if NS1 drops, dude, NS2, he's got your back. He's like, dude, Hak5's over here, right? Sorry about NS1. He's having a little hiccup. He'll be back in a bit, right? And we'll come back to this in just a moment for the zone transfers. But essentially, those two are handling it, and it's just good to have a little bit of redundancy. I mean, remember, quote unquote, the internet was made to survive nuclear attack. Believe what you will. I defer to Snopes.com, which is a pretty cool domain. Wow, I'm going to stop this with that. Yeah. So there are also recursive name servers, right? Recursive. Now that's a name server that's not just responsible for this domain. It's responsible for a whole bunch of, well, not necessarily responsible, but it can answer your questions if you have them. So for example, if you ask, hey, what is example.com, right? And your domain, your name server from your ISP is set to whatever ns.yourisp.com, and it's like, you know what? I don't know. I don't know where you can find www.example.com. So let me just make a quick phone call. I'll get back to you in just a moment. I'm going to put you on hold. I'm going to ask dot. I'm going to ask root. I'm going to ask the Mecca, right? This guy right here, right? It's like Gaia. It's like, dude, that is the internet, right? So it's going to say, hey, yo, looking for www.example.com. And it's going to like, dude, I don't know who you're talking about, right? But I know this guy Com. He could probably help you, right? So you're like, okay. And then you're like, asking com. And com's like, well, I never heard of www.example.com. But I am responsible for everything under the sun when it comes to .com. So let me defer you to example. And example comes in and goes, oh, you're looking for www. Man, he's right here. Because like example.com is totally aspiring to be Cheech or something, right? And boom, example.com, like you finally get down to the authoritative name server, whether it be the master or slave, of example.com, and you get your answer. And that's what a recursive name server is. You'll most likely find them from your internet service providers. If you've got like a cable modem plugged into your computer and you do a little ifconfig or ipconfig or whatever you love, it's gonna tell you what your DNS servers are, your DNS servers are, your name servers, kind of one and the same. And you know, if you're not using something fancy like OpenDNS or Google's awesome IP 8.8.8.8, sorry tangent, then you know they're probably provided by DHCP, more acronyms for the win, and yeah, that's your recursive server that's going to find out. It's going to hook you up, man, because we wouldn't want to have to ask root every time. That'd get old, right? You know what else would get old? That recursive server having to ask root, which has to ask com, which has to ask example every time you want to get there, right? So what you'll a lot of times find with these recursive name servers is that they are caching. Everything is more fun when it's cached, man. Keep a local copy so you don't have to ask every time, right? Until the time to live expires, but that's outside of the scope of this. Time to lives in seconds, starting with 300, which is 5 minutes, up to a number that's very high, provided right there. It's one of those things we do. And then it forgets, and it'll ask again, just in case it's changed. So if you've ever wondered why when you register a domain, and sometimes it takes a while to propagate, it's because, everybody still remembered it over there. I gotta wait for the time to live to kill. And then they're like, oh, yeah, I remember, but it's been a while. And they said, check every 14,400 or whatever. So I'm gonna just check now. And that's exactly what they do. I will drink to that. So that all just brings us back to zone transfers. Well, what's a zone transfer? Okay, imagine yourself the sysadmin of Northwind Traders. We're going to go with that. So you're a CIO man of this awesome, elegant enterprise, Northwind Traders, and you have corporate offices all over the world. And so you've got lots of name servers, and they all need to play happy because you've got branch offices and synergy that needs to exemplify performance under strategies for win-win situations, or some shit like that, right? So everything needs to be in sync, right? We talked about this right here, and I'm going to make it prettier because who does that, right? The quote thing. Zone edit.com. Booyah, right? So we got ns1 and ns2.zoneedit.com, and they are both handling this fine, fancy place that I like to call home, right? Well, ns2 needs to know what ns1 knows. He needs to know what he knows, right? So they need to be in sync is what I'm saying, right? And an easy way for them to stay in sync, slightly going out of fashion way, but whatever, is for them to do what's called a zone transfer. And that's when ns2 here says, yo, ns1, give me all your zones. It says, I need to be on the level with you, so tell me everything you know so that I can make sure that my database is correct. Because, I mean, sure, ns1.zoneedit.com knows about www, and so does ns2, right? But what if we just added, like, a new one to the mix? What if we added, like, something crazy, like, I don't know, craziness, right? It wouldn't know about that. .quote. It wouldn't. So we'd have to do what's called a zone transfer so that they could stay in sync. Well, imagine, for example, that instead of ns2.zoneedit.com saying, yo, give me what you know about that hak5.org. You were to do that. You were like, dude, tell me everything you know about hak5.org, right? If it was misconfigured, it might tell you. And that would be what we call an AXFR, which is just some opcode stuff to essentially mean zone transfer. I bring that up because that is a full name server, zone transfer. It's going to transfer you all of the zones. It's going to transfer you the www, it's going to transfer you the hex value, it's going to transfer you the smtp.hak5, it's going to transfer you the mail.hak5, it's going to transfer you the vpn.hak5. So that, you know, when NS1 takes a hiccup and you really need to know where that host is, NS2 is there to back you up, right? Okay. So we've established that. That's why you would want to do that. Unfortunately, some people don't configure their name servers correctly. And if that's the fact, you could potentially say, hey, give me all your stuff, and it would do that. The other alternative there, than AXFR, is an IXFR, which is incremental. Horribly handwritten. But an incremental is like you would imagine if, say, for example, Northwind Traders or Contoso, I just remembered. Little tangent there on the, who was it now? TechNet. You know, if they were like, they had like tons and tons and tons of zones, and they had to do this database replication like every couple of hours because people are always looking for the new host, they might not want to do an AXFR. They might want to say, yo, just give me the new stuff since last time I asked you. But essentially, all we're interested in is the AXFR, because when we're trying to hack the Gibson to be the first time, we're assuming. We're going to go with that. Now, how do you find out any of this stuff? It's time for the tools. It's time for the practical. Let's jump over to our fine friend here, Ubuntu, after I log in. Now, our Ubuntu box is connected to the wall-mounted Hak5 server, running virtual machines with jazz hands. And I'm here in Backtrack 4R1, which is, if you've been watching the show for a while, you know that Backtrack is one of my favorite hacker distros, just because it's got everything built in. Yeah. We're going to use a couple of tools here. One of them is pretty cross-platform. It's called NSLookup. Just type it into your prompt. If you're on a Mac right now, good for you. Type NSLookup. If you're on Windows, if you're on BSD, whatever. Anyway, it's there. What I'm saying is it's cross-platform. It's built into the toolkit. It's like DIR. Actually, no, it's not like DIR. It's like Clear. No, CLS. Anyway, it's one of those that's on everything, which makes things nice. So you could just open up whatever your terminal preference is, type NSLookup, and you get this happy little Waka that is waiting for you to type commands, and now we can use this tool to do all sorts of fun name server queries. I know. Can you believe it? We're like totally geeking out about name servers. Congrats to you. Achievement points just for making it halfway. All right. So first thing I'm going to tell NSLookup is what server I want to use. And let's just be generic here, and I mentioned it earlier in the show. Server 8.8.8.8, okay? That server is actually run by Google, and it's a name server available to use for whatever your Googling pleasures are. They will resolve your domains because they are a caching recursive name server. Hooray! Pound 53, because it's UDP 53. And that means that we can now ask it all about the internet. So let's ask it about the internet. Let's ask it, let's say type equals A. I'm assuming that works. Type equals A, right? Oh, sorry, set type equals A. Say Hak5, let's say www.hak5.org. And it replies with the address. It says the www.hak5.org, right, is 66.11.227.124, that IP address that we've been talking about all day. Dude, sweet. We could also not, let's set it to something else. Let's set type equals txt. We had talked about this. This is another record that is near and dear to my heart. Just like the A record is going to tell you an IP address, or quadruple A is going to tell you an IP version 6 address, or a CNAME is going to tell you an alias, or an MX is going to tell you an exchange, mail exchange. There are actually tons and tons of these records. One of them that's kind of fun is just TXT. It's pretty arbitrary for like 6,000 something. Anyway, it's for a lot of characters, for some text, for some arbitrary text. Some applications use it for other things, or you could put some human readable stuff in there, and that's exactly what we're going to have fun with. There's actually a pretty neat domain here that stores some interesting text within the TXT records of all of its subdomains or hosts or whatever. And as you guys know, Wikipedia is, well, if you ask Jimmy Wales, he'll tell you it's the source of all human knowledge, or some stuff like that. Anyway, hooray for Wikipedia, right? We all know and love it. Let's ask Wikipedia about Hak5, because we're vain, by using DNS, because we're in NS lookup here. And you can do this in any platform. So we've set the type to TXT. We've set our server to 8.8.8.8. Now all we have to do is say hak5.wp.dg.cx, right? This domain here says that Hak5 is a weekly homegrown video podcast produced by the Hak5 crew and distributed by Revision 3. Word up to your mothers. That's pretty cool. You could try it with anything. You could just up doesn't work. You could pop in, whatever you wanted to know. It's going to give you only like so much text, right? But boom, now you have a way to query Wikipedia from the command line. It's cross-platform. Okay. Sorry, Windows folks. We're going to talk about a tool you don't have now, because while NS lookup is really cool, I'm going to exit out of that. We're going to play with another fun one called dig. No, Darren Kitchen is not the new dig. Nor is any other meme. Sorry, I was just like thinking, because they were talking about that on Dignation, but I didn't watch the episode, but I heard that they were like talking about dig or whatever. Anyway, yeah, good stuff. So let's use dig. Dig is a simple command to use in Linux. It's just dig. It stands for the Domain Internet Gopher, I want to say. Yes, it goes for the internet. And we're going to say dig. Let's find out the MX record of Hak5. Dig space MX space hak5.org, right? And that returns back, and it says that mx1.sub4.homey.mail.dreamhost.com, right there, right? That's the first MX, and then boom, there's its time to live. It's not going to time out for 14,243 seconds. And it's an A record to this machine right here. So if you wanted to send mail to feedback@hak5.org, then you could, then like MX fun happy stuff would happen, and then they would go there. Let's say that we wanted to do like we just did with. Give me a good example. Let's okay, let's do this. Dig txt. dg.cx, right? And it would tell you that hydrocodone, or something I can't pronounce, is a semi-synthetic opioid derived from two naturally occurring opiates, codeine and thibane. Something about ibuprofen, which is like best friends with acetaminophen. But yeah, there you go, right? Dig from the command line. Boom. Wasn't that simple? You didn't have to go into NS lookup. I mean, sure, you could do the same thing with a bunch of tags in NS lookup, but that's dig. Dig also has a really fun thing called plus short, which I encourage you to go and play with, where you can just get results and then do sed and awk and some other fun stuff. You can do some nifty stuff, but we'll leave that for another time, right? So those are two little tools that you can use to just get some basic information about what's going on with those domains. You can say, hey, name server, man, what you know, right? So we're going to take a quick break, because I know that I'm rambling here. This episode is probably like 43 minutes long. And we're going to thank one of our sponsors. But when we get back, We're going to talk about how we can use these tools, as well as another fun tool that's built into Backtrack 4, Release 1, that's going to allow us to not only potentially zone transfer a domain, but if they don't allow that, let's just brute force it. So we'll see you in just a bit.
If you've got a creative idea or want to start a new business, I recommend getting a domain name and web hosting from domain.com. Domain.com has the domain you want, fast, easy, and inexpensive. With free domain tools including URL and email forwarding, DNS management, and transfer lock. Their Linux-powered hosting plans are dependable, flexible, and affordable too. With free setup and no commitment required, their deluxe hosting offers unlimited bandwidth and site builder pages at a mere $8.75 a month. They even make it dead simple to get started with plenty of free software like WordPress, Joomla, Drupal, and more, all installed in just a few clicks. And as a Hak5 viewer, you get an extra 15% off your order when you check out with coupon code HAK5. Got a great idea? It all starts with a great domain, domain.com.
All right, so welcome to the home stretch. Let's dive right into the tools. Now, I'm here in Backtrack 4.1, and this little command here I've crafted, dig, tact, axfr, hak6.org. You'll notice this little @ns1.zoneedit.com. That's going to say, hey, ask ns1.zoneedit.com, which I know is the authoritative name server for that fine domain, hak6.org. I know, I registered a new one just as an example for this segment. And we're going to ask it for tact, the type, axfr, which we remember from just a minute ago is zone transfer. And when I hit that, check that out. Boom! I've got like all this info here, and it's like, dude, now I know about pop.hak6.org and mail and IRC and chat and beta and VPN and other fun, interesting, really nifty stuff, whatever. It's text records. So that's really cool. But go ahead and try that on anything, and it's not going to work. You can't just willy-nilly. You could write a shell script that would try it on everything, run it for years. But most likely, you're not going to get it on like everything, right? Because why would you allow the internet to zone transfer you? Because when you do that, all you're doing is saying, here are all of my hosts, right? Man, not everybody needs to know that. Like, sure, ns1.zoneedit.com needs to know that because it's the name server for our domain, and ns2 needs to know it. So why don't we just say, hey, only ns2 can do that? And that's exactly actually what I've done here, is I've purposefully set up the security to be insecure so that I can show you an example of a poorly configured name server. And yeah, let's check it out, because I'm actually here over at a fantastic host that does all sort of managed DNS hosting and whatnot. It's called zoneedit.com. They're one of the bigger name server providers and stuff. And this is their website that let's go to the new one. So www, right? Talking about some zones here. Let's try new.zoneedit.com. Hey, fancy that. Doesn't that look a lot better? Doesn't that look like a little 2010 action going on? And, you know, full disclosure, I got to say that the ZoneEdit people have totally hooked me up with a beta of their new website. So, you know, thanks guys. I'm checking it out. And, you know, if you want to check it out too, they do some pretty nifty stuff. It's actually a free service where they can do like managed DNS of like not just, you know, A records and C names and stuff, but like all, like tons of records. And then like they've got this thing where if you want to like pay them like a buck for a credit, you can get different things like web forwarding, and they got like failover services, which are pretty cool. And backup MX, like, dude, what an interesting way to back up mail. But yeah, so they hooked me up to this, so, you know, full disclosure there. Figured let you guys know. It's not too expensive either, like a buck for each of these thingies. But yeah, so even if you're just going to use the free service, it's kind of worth checking out. I've been having a lot of fun with it lately. If I just log in here, I'll show you. So Hak5 Darren. All right, cool. So checking out my zones, right? And I have a live zone here, hak6.org. I'm going to hit edit there. And you can see I've got a ton of different records that I've created here. In fact, I can easily create another one. I'm going to call it I don't know, I could call it whatever, right? And I could make it instead of, I could boom, all those freaking different records, right? I'm not interested in doing that right now. I haven't set up forwarding or failover or any of that. But what I'm totally concerned with is security, right? Allow transfer here is set to any. That means anyone can zone transfer me and then know about all of my secret hex codes that you shouldn't be wasting your time with, right? So why don't we set that to something a little bit more reasonable? All right, we're going to set that to, if I don't change it now, I can show you another feature of the tool that we're about to. Why don't we just jump ahead for a bit and then we'll come back and then we'll go forward again. It'll be like, right? Or maybe it'd be more like a, with the rock step. I don't know if you guys do that. So we're going to leave it as any for just a moment here because let's pop back over to our backtrack 4 and our wall-mounted happiness. Because I have right here, fierce. Okay, so we're finally to the tool that we teased at the top of the show, and now you know why that TV term is called tease, because it really was teasing you. But whatever, these are fundamentals, man. This is like foundation. Now you like understand from totally loopy guy what the heck DNS means, right? Fierce is part of the it's part of the Backtrack 4.1 distribution. I highly recommend you go over to backtracklinux.org and download yourself a responsible copy so that you can play with these tools in a very mischievous and fun manner, but not evil. And we're going to, in the Fierce directory, under enumeration, that term from the top, run perl fierce.pl, tac DNS hak6.org, word list host.txt, tac stop. Now, we'll get to the rest in a minute, but the one that I'm really concerned about is the thing at the end here, tac stop, right? I'm going to run that, and 3, 2, done. Done, right? What did it tell us? It says, hey, I'm trying a zone transfer first before I do any sort of brute forcing. And since I had purposely misconfigured my name server, I said, whoa. It actually says whoa. It probably says, whoa. Or insert Keanu Reeves. It worked. Misconfigured DNS server found. OMGs, right? And here we have all the goodies, right? By the way, don't try these IP addresses because I've totally changed them by now. But yeah, and it just goes on to say, hey, there pretty much isn't any time, any point doing it much more here. Yeah, you got everything, right? Have fun. And that is why we want to configure our name servers properly, right? So I'm going to pop back over to the spiffiness that is zone edit. And here in the security, and trust me, it's not set up this way by default, you can see here that I can give it an address. I can say, hey, I only want zone edits, zone transfers to happen from 66.44.55.88. I don't know who you are, I'm sorry. But, or I could write 0.0.0, right? So if I do that, it's totally not going to allow AXFRs or zone transfers from anywhere. I'm gonna hit save, boop. And our zone has pending changes, so I'll come over to pending and be like, boom, publish. And hey, see, check that out, it's free. Didn't even do anything. Check it out. And now, when I pop back over, I can be like, hey, fierce. Actually, before we do that, let's do it the old-fashioned way, just like we did before. Hey, dig. Give me the text record of hydrocodone? No, let's say, hey, fierce, give me the zone transfer for hak6.org and ask ns1.zoneedit.com because we're mad chill, right? He knows me from back in the day, right? And it's going to be like, dude, transfer failed. You're not allowed to do that anymore because I actually properly configured my name server. Hooray, right? So what does that mean to fierce? Well, let's diagnose that command again because fierce.pl, our little Perl script here, with attack DNS hak6.org is just saying, hey, that's my target, right? I want to find out everything you can about hak6.org. That's the zone that we're interested in. Doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be just hak6.org, right? Like I said, with the subdomains east.corp.hak5.org, west.corp.hak5.org, I could point this at corp.hak5.org and try everything, right? What is it trying? It is trying word list, right? What word list? Host.txt. In fact, if I less host.txt, less hosts.txt, you can see that it's a text file with a bunch of words. We've talked about brute forcing a ton in the past. Word lists are very important. It's very important to have a thorough word list. The one that comes with this distribution is, well, I don't want to call it weak, but it's just an example one to let you have fun. So have fun in a non-evil way. All right. So our word list is our host.txt. And it still have that tax stop on the end that says, yo, dude, try the zone transfer first, and if that don't work, do the other thing you do. And that other thing it does is it brute forces. So it's going to go through that text file there and say, what was it, text file again? Dang it, how many times am I going to do that wrong? Did I get an accent? Weird. It's going to say, hey, Apple, right? Is there an apple.hak6.org? Is there an application.hak6.org? Applications. It's just going to keep going and going and going and going. And because that's totally legit, you can ask as many questions as you want. You could probably ask like 3,000 questions a second if you're really quick with it. Imagine what you could do with like lots of servers asking lots of questions. And hey, nothing wrong with asking a couple questions. Unless, of course, you're in North Dakota and you try to do zone transfer, which is illegal since 2008. So if you're in North Dakota, check out your laws and rules and regulations because that's illegal. So yeah, let's just run that command now. I think it's down here. All right, so I run this, and it's saying, okay, so request timed out or transfer not allowed. Go figure. It's not going to allow transfers like I showed you with dig, but it had to try. I'm going to let this go for a bit. As you might imagine, a brute force attack takes some time. So why don't you take this time to reflect on how you could be going to hak5.org, clicking the little store link and buying yourself a nice hoodie to keep you warm or something. I don't know. I just thought I'd work that in there, you know? I mean, I'm just pretty much killing time right now. In fact, this is probably in the bloopers. Not really. And with the magic of editing, Fierce is instantly done. Let's check it out. It says, okay, trying the old-fashioned way, brute force, right? And it checked everything in that host.txt file, and it found that chat.hak6, IRC, mail, pop, SMTP, VPN, etc. All of these exist. It gave us the IP addresses of those, and now we have some hosts here to actually start trying some port scans on to find out what services are running, to see what versions they have, to potentially try some exploits. And that's where we're headed with the show. That's exactly where we're going. That's what's going on. Start with the domains, work our way down, right? And yeah, so that's Fierce. I mean, pretty simple. You give it a text file with a bunch of names and it tries them. It tries them pretty quickly, actually. And you too can try this at home because I encourage you to go and download and check it out, right? Also, great stuff coming up on the show in the coming weeks. But that's more of something that I would say in the what we call D block, because it's the fourth portion of the show, which means that we are not there yet because we haven't had our third ad. So we're going to thank a sponsor. And when we get back, I'm going to tease you some more stuff. And then thank you again. But let's just do that now. So, sponsor time.
This is a new breed of warrior for a new breed of warfare. This is Tier 1. Medal of Honor allows you to play as a Tier 1 operator, one of the most elite warriors in the world. Available now.
So that just wraps up this episode of Hak5.org. See how I just worked that in? Wasn't planned. It's just kind of natural now. We're talking about zones. Hey, could happen. I want to thank the people at zoneedit.com for hooking me up with the new .zoneedit and checking out the nifty features there. So if you're looking for dynamic DNS hosting or managed stuff, pretty cool stuff, nifty features, not expensive. So hey, even if you're just going to have fun with zone transfers. Again, Fierce over at wherever you can find Fierce, or built into Backtrack, which is my favorite distro. It's like love and ponies and hearts and unicorns. And other than that, I want to remind you guys that you can send your feedback over to feedback@hak5.org. You can check out hak5.org/store to buy all sorts of nifty goodies to keep you warm in the coming winter, because I don't want you to freeze. Go and get yourself a hoodie already. I mean, it'd be terrible if you froze to death. Why would you even think such a thing? Also, dude, awesome stuff coming in the show. Our friend Mubix, aka Rob Fuller, aka that guy that blows your mind every time he shows up and hey, we have a whiteboard, is going to be awesome. So stay tuned for that. Shannon will be back with us next week, and I look forward to hearing what all you guys have to say about this quite loopy and very fun edition of Hak5 with the zones, right? Trivia pick, no, what was it called? Not trivia, Technolost photo, sorry, I don't have one this week. But we'll find out from Shannon next week when Darren does more awesome editing. In the meantime, I'm gonna point at more random things and say, until next week, trust your Technolust with zone transfers. Are you following me so far? Because it made a lot more sense when I wrote it. And then I had one of these. It makes sense. Email. I'm reading them, I promise. I really am. Reading most of them. I lied. I'm so backlogged. I will read them though. I'm like a week behind. Bunnies! How was your weekend? I mean, I'd say that mine was good. Actually, mine was hella good up until I got hit by a car. I said hella, because I moved to the West Coast. FML. Oh, we're still recording. Woo!